Joining me now live is David Bassanese, Chief Economist from Beta Shares, who formerly worked with Federal Treasury and the OECD, and Gigi Foster, Professor with the UNSW School of Economics. Hi to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us on our first panel this evening. David, we'll start with you. You're an advocate for a cashless society. Why do you think we're ready for this?
I just think you've got to move with the times. I mean, as you pointed out in the intro there, something like 85% of all in-store transactions now are done without cash. If you allow for online payments, it's something like 92, 95%. So literally almost more than 90% of transactions. So the question is almost like we are virtually cashless now, and there's a few, obviously there's a few members of the community that are still using cash, but it is becoming a burden, I think, for small businesses to have to deal with both electronic transactions and cash. There's a few other reasons as well in terms of dealing with crime. I think which is very important. I mean, a lot of the cash that is still used today is largely used for organised crime, and it will also, so that'll help stamp that out. And I think help make taxing. I know no one wants to hear the word taxation, but once we go cashless, there are various ways and means to tax much more efficiently and reduce the burden on income tax and all sorts of other taxes. Yeah,
and I guess these days, I feel like we rely more on our phones perhaps than what we do our wallets. But Gigi, why do you think that we're not ready to head down this pathway officially?
Well, first let me say that you're absolutely right that Australians have been following the fashion cycle towards cashlessness, but there is still this contingent of Australians who use it, and the statistics that you have just spoken about don't actually capture all of the use of cash in our society. For example, do they capture when a parent might give an allowance to a child and the child is saving and determining what they can buy or what can they save for, and there's kind of a learning process that goes on with that cash, or when somebody is simply holding cash in order to feel safer, feel secure, diversify in some sense their portfolio, which is something we often advise people to do in financial realms. So I think it is something that would increase inequality to actually prohibit cash to go all the way. I don't think there's any problem with a business if it wants to, saying, you don't have the possibility of using cash here if that's legal. I don't frequent such businesses because I don't like that. I think
that is the question at the moment, is should it be illegally required of businesses to accept cash? And I think in this day and age, it's a massive burden, on small businesses to, given that 5% of transactions are in cash, why do you need all the overheads associated with having to handle cash?
Well, they don't have to. It's their choice. But, I mean, why force them to say no cash? They can decide. I mean, there are plenty of cafes on my campus that don't take cash. It's their choice.
At the moment, as I understand the law, they're legally obliged to accept cash.
Actually, that's not true. So I have been told that cash is only supposed to be kind of legally required in a case where you're paying a debt. And apparently just buying a coffee isn't considered a debt. That's why he was refused at Parliament House.
Why was Bob Katter refused?
Because when you have just purchased something, apparently that's not classified as a debt. Right? So this is how they're getting away with it. Now, I was at the RBA a few months ago, and I asked them specifically, because of course this is in the news, I said, is the plan for the RBA to basically phase out cash? And I was told explicitly, in no uncertain manner, if Australians in any amount keep demanding cash, we will keep supplying cash. And I think that's the key thing. It's not that we want to say no to technology and no to progress. We just want to enable choice. Consumer choice is a good thing.
Well, I mean, what you're saying, though, is interesting because you are effectively banning cash once you allow merchants to sort of say no cash. I mean, of course, some will do it. But there'll be many, many pensioners, for example, in rural communities, for example, there may be small businesses now that say no cash. And so what are they going to do?
I think that's a fair point. Let me go to some of our jurors to see how they're feeling. Craig, we'll start with you up the back. How often are you using cash?
Not ever.
You're not? So do you think we're heading towards a cashless society then?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And to be honest, as much as I like the idea of cash, I think we are moving towards that. We may as well get used to it. The thing I'd be asking, though, is we need to get rid of the fees that the banks are charging to access the...
That is a very fair point. Peter, what about you? How often are you using cash?
I never use cash. I love going out and buying things without needing to carry my wallet. I just go up and click a couple of times and I can see the transaction recorded there. I don't have to take money out of my wallet. I don't have to put money back in from a change and carry coins and things. I think it's great, but at the same time, I don't support a cashless society at the moment because there are people and I think my mother in particular, who's simply not in a position where she can use a phone to make transactions. And I think we need to look after that element of our community.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it's that vulnerable element of the community. Anna, what about you? Do you like to tap and go, or are you a cash woman?
I don't even own a card.
There you go. Wow, that's interesting. So you prefer to use your phone?
No,
Oh, you like cash?
yeah, I only ever use cash. I don't even own a card
Why is that? Can I ask?
because I don't like the traceability of having a digital trail. That you leave a digital trail of every purchase you've made or anything like that, and I like the anonymity of using cash. And
That's an interesting point, David.
Yeah,
because it goes to that criminal element that you had mentioned before as well.
There's two. I mean, criminality. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're involved with crime, organised crime, it's great to use cash. There's no traceability. But or even as a private citizen, some people want to make discrete transactions that wouldn't be recorded. And I think, if we do go to a fully cashless society, we do need to maybe think about cashless cards. For example, you have a card that you can buy and you can put some credit on it. But thereafter, if you buy things with that card, there's no sort of, record of those transactions. So I think one of the big criticisms of going fully cashless is the loss of that lingering, privacy aspect. But having said that, 95% of transactions now are done without a card. So if you're worried about your privacy, it's too late.
It's too late. Gigi, and just to go back to Peter's point, it's that section of society. Is this it's a generational question, to be honest?
A little bit, but I mean, it's not just the elderly. It is also the younger people. When I was teaching my children how to manage money, it was much easier using dollars and,
we can
notes and coins.
teach them to use a credit card
We
now.
can, but it is much more tactile and it's much more of a learning experience to do it with real money. It's like coming in person to a lecture versus following it online.
Yeah.
And by the way, on the crime point, we've had crime for decades, right? I mean, it's not just, oh my gosh, we got to get rid of it now. I mean, this seems to me to be a solution in search of a problem.
Okay, well, look, you've both had your say and both very fair arguments as well. It is now time to call on the jury. Jurors, you have 10 seconds to decide, should Australia go cashless? Jury members, what have you decided? All of you bar one. Everybody no, only one yes. So Craig, you're not changing that. You still maintain it's time to go cashless.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah? Peter, you voted no.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I love using my phone to make transactions, but I think we need to look after the people in the community who are not ready to use it.
Yeah.
And it's not a big impost on me. I think most businesses are capable of carrying some cash.
Yeah. Fair enough. And what about you, Susan? You also voted no. Why?
Well, I mean, I agree with the vulnerable people in the community and people just say remote areas. So, I realised since post-COVID how people have gone to not using cash. But I found before COVID where I live, my local shopping centre, most of them wouldn't take a card, and then they started taking cards because of COVID. But then lots of places you're getting charged a surcharge for paying with a card.
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID is what has really sparked this conversation, but there's no doubt we're going to keep having it. There's other places around the world that are looking to go cashless, so one that we'll be keeping an eye on. David Bassanese, Gigi Foster, great to have you both on the panel.
No
Thank you
worries.
so
Thank you.
much for joining us.